I have been reborn, reborn to the day I adopted that ungrateful son. The cold wind blew, and the sound of a baby crying, heart-wrenching, echoed in my ears. Then I remembered, on this day, my dear husband placed his illegitimate child on the path I always took home from work. He knew I couldn't bear to leave it, and once I brought the child home, he could propose adoption, turning him into our legitimate child in his previous life. He succeeded, but now, I turned and left without hesitation when I learned that this child had contracted pneumonia from being exposed to the cold wind for too long in winter, was suffering from a persistent high fever, and would likely be left with a disability. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. What surprised me even more was that my ungrateful son from my past life had also been reborn into this infant, about to experience the life he should have had in my previous life. After adopting this child, I raised him as if he were my own, pouring my heart and soul into his care. For this, I even gave up my career to become a housewife, using all the inheritance left by my parents to buy him a house and help him get married in the city. Yet, the outcome was that I froze to death in the dilapidated house of my rural hometown, licking dirty water from the ground to quench my thirst before I died. Meanwhile, my good son was dutifully caring for his real mother, my husband's true love, in the house I had bought. That day, I closed my eyes with deep resentment. It's so cold, and I'm so thirsty. Who is she? I took a step back, questioning in disbelief. My son is getting married. Marriage inevitably involves buying a house and a car, not to mention he has already decided to settle down in a big city. Houses in prime locations are now sky high, and my son has been spoiled by me since childhood, while my future daughter-in-law is also quite picky. They have their eyes on a large flat in the city center and are unwilling to take out a loan. The full payment price has reached 8 figures. When my son stood awkwardly and stubbornly in front of me, looking at me with pleading eyes, my heart softened. Since he was little, this was the first time he had ever begged me like this. Mom, how can I hold my head up in front of Lily if I take out a loan to buy a house? Besides, why take out a loan when we can pay in full? It's not like our family doesn't have enough money. I'm your only son. How can you bear to let me lose face? He has always been someone who cares about face, ever since he was young, so I didn't say that it wasn't our family's money, but rather the inheritance left to me by my parents. They had specifically drawn up a will before they passed away, leaving all their inheritance to me, with no connection to my husband. For this reason, my husband Jiang Yan even went through a period of Cold War with me, believing that it was my parents' distrust of him. It wasn't until we adopted Jiang Qi that our relationship improved. Because of this, Jiang Yan never kept any money at home. All his salary was kept by himself, and he never let me know about it. Even if I accidentally asked about it, he would fly into a rage. I also took care of most of the household expenses, including Jiang Qi's living expenses, tuition, and tutoring fees from childhood to adulthood. I never cared about these things because they were the loved ones and family I had chosen. In the end, I reluctantly sold the old Western-style house my parents left me and my favorite collection of jewelry. Through a voluntary gift, I transferred the money to my son, Jiang Qi, so he could fulfill his wish and buy the large flat he had his eye on in full. But after buying the apartment, the issue of renovation arose. Faced with my son's pleading eyes, I gritted my teeth and, despite having never asked for help in half a lifetime, humbled myself to borrow money from relatives and friends. Borrow money? How many years has it been since you last worked? Even if I lend it to you, could you possibly pay it back? My long uncontacted best friend sneered at me. My face flushed red. Jiang Yan said he would pay it back, and Jiang Qi is getting married, so I have time now. If it really comes to it, I can go find a job. My best friend's eyes were filled with doubt, but in the end, she still lent me the money. I mumbled my thanks and took the money to the new house to find my son, only to encounter a strange woman there, my future daughter-in law, Lily, who has always been somewhat cold to me, is now smiling brightly and talking closely with that woman, calling her mom. Mom, I have met my future in-laws, and this woman is not one of them. Suspicion began to rise in my heart. The woman affectionately patted Lily's hand, her eyes crinkling with joy. Yes, 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 you are just like my own daughter. If Shachi ever bullies you, I will stand up for you. Jiang Qi walked out of the room, speaking in a cooing tone I had never heard before. Mom, who exactly is your son? Watching the scene, I suddenly noticed how much this woman resembled Jiang Qi, and a chill ran through me that day. I shouted questions like a madman. My husband rushed over, but shielded that woman behind him, looking at me with disgust and wariness. Even my son, whom I had poured my heart and soul into, stood opposite me, holding that woman's hand. In the struggle, someone pushed me hard, and I fell down the stairs, blood spilling everywhere. My head was broken. And my leg was fractured. My good husband and son wouldn't even call an ambulance. Jiang Yan ignored me, writhing in pain on the ground, and picked up my phone at the first opportunity. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, he skillfully unlocked it using Jiang Qi's birthday, then happily turned to his son and said, "Wang Qing really managed to borrow some money. I'll add a bit more, and now we can properly renovate the house." Jiang Qi hesitated, glancing at me, but she, in front of that woman. He wasn't even willing to call her mom anymore. Jiang Yan turned his head, kicked my leg, and as I cried out in pain, his eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he said, "I was planning to make things clear with Wang Qing anyway. Your mother and I should have been the real couple all along. Our family should have reunited long ago. As for Wang Qing, now that she's in this state, we might as well send her back to her hometown. After all, she can't move anymore, and no one there knows her anyway." Everything before my eyes felt so bizarre and surreal, as if I were in hell. My husband, who had always been gentle and refined, now spoke words that made me tremble all over. In my unbelieving eyes, Jiang Yan hesitated for only a moment. The woman behind him merely called out softly and plaintively, "Shao Qi," and he nodded in agreement with Jiang Yan's decision. "Dad, you decide everything." He turned his head away, no longer meeting my gaze, and so, I was sent back to Jiang Yan's hometown by this family. When Jiang Yan and I first got married, I had been here once. The remoteness and poverty of this place left a deep impression on me, making me, who had been pampered by my parents at the time, secretly vow never to accompany Jiang Yan back here again. But now, I had become a paralyzed person who couldn't move, abandoned in a dilapidated wooden house that no one cared about. With every gust of wind, my entire body felt icy cold. Yet what chilled me the most was Lily's mocking revelation of the truth to me. It turned out that Jiang Qi was the illegitimate child of my husband and that woman. That adoption was a complete conspiracy, designed solely to make me treat Jiang Qi as my own child. Moreover, Jiang Qi had recognized his birth mother since he was young, and in his heart, she was his real mother. I cried, cursed, and screamed on the ground like a madwoman. Jiang Yan looked at me with disgust. Jiang Qi frowned and walked away. And the look in that woman's eyes was unforgettable. It was one of condescending pity. It's like looking at a pitiful creature. I completely broke down. I thought I had frozen to death in that broken-down house, but when I opened my eyes again, I was wearing a clean, warm coat. My legs and feet were nimble, my fingers were fair and clean, and passers-by occasionally cast admiring glances at me. I wandered aimlessly for half a day before I finally realized I had been reborn. "What day is it?" Excitedly, I took out my phone, not caring that my nails split while pulling the zipper of my bag, just focusing intently on the phone screen. Today is December 29th, 2002. I stared fixedly at the string of numbers, suddenly burst out laughing, and then tears fell. If it weren't for the fact that this road was sparsely populated, my alternating between crying and laughing would definitely have been taken as a sign of madness. This day was the day I found Jiang Qi on my way home from work. December 29th. I took this day as Jiang Qi's birthday and racked my brains to celebrate it for 24 years. A sudden, heart-wrenching cry of a baby rang out beside me. Instinctively, I wanted to head towards the direction of the cry, but I stopped abruptly after just a couple of steps, looking around. It's here. This is the road where I found Jiang Qi. This is near my old Western-style house. Apart from this, there are no other residences around, only a stretch of barren fields. It's a shortcut on my way home and was my secret base when I was a child. Finding Jiang Qi here, I always thought it was fate that brought us together, but the truth of the matter is that my dear husband, Jiang Yan, deliberately left him here, just so I would naturally take the initiative to adopt this child. So, has it already begun? Fate has indeed been so kind to me, allowing me to return to the turning point of events. At this moment, even the cries of a baby can no longer move me. Rather, the thought that it is Jiang Qi who is now crying in the cold wind only fills me with immense satisfaction. Once, I loved him so dearly. Whenever he fell ill, I would stay up all night taking care of him. When he went to school, I would pick him up and drop him off regardless of wind or rain. Once, while picking him up from school, the temperature suddenly dropped. I gave him my coat to wear and ended up catching a fever from the cold, yet, I still insisted on getting up to take him to and from school, fearing something might happen to him on the way. Oh, how ridiculous! I looked around, walked a circle, and saw no one except a crying baby named Jiang Qi placed by the roadside. Of course, Jiang Yan is such a cautious person, so cautious that he kept the truth hidden from me for over 20 years. Why would he leave anyone nearby to arouse my suspicion? How confident must he be in my character to devise such a bold plan, leaving a baby by the roadside on such a cold day? I sneered with a mocking smile, not sparing another glance at the infant on the ground, and turned to walk in another direction. Since You're so certain, then wait patiently. In this lifetime, I want to see how Jian Yan will legitimately bring back his illegitimate child without my interference and acceptance. When I received Jian Yan's call, I was in the mall trying on a very beautiful dress, of course. The price was also quite expensive. How foolish I was back then, believing Jian Yan's nonsense about being frugal and working hard together for the sake of this family. In reality, he wouldn't even blink when buying cigarettes that cost hundreds of yuan, while I didn't dare to shop at this mall, which was my favorite during my teenage years. Later, after adopting Jiangqi, I rarely spent money on myself, hardly buying clothes even once a year, and all the money I saved was used to raise Jiangqi. And what was the result? All of it fed an ungrateful wolf. Every time I think about it, my heart bleeds with hatred. The ringing persisted insistently. I stared at my phone for a while, then answered the call expressionlessly. As soon as the call connected, Jian Yan asked me in a voice that was desperately trying to hide his anxiety, "Ching Ching, your boss said you left work early. Why aren't you home yet?" Hearing the probing tone in his voice, I gave a cold laugh and a vengeful idea arose in my mind, so I tried my best to suppress my hatred and spoke to him in a gentle, concerned tone. I'm at the hospital. I'll be back later. Don't wait for me for dinner. My phone is about to die. Oh, the doctor is calling me. I'll talk to you when I get back. Bye. After hanging up, I turned off my phone without hesitation, imagining Jian Yan's current state of mind. He probably thinks I've already found the child and am at the hospital with them. Right at this moment, I suddenly understood that man like never before. I think it's very likely that Jian Yan won't return to the place where he left the baby. He wouldn't want to reveal any flaws at a time like this. What if I called the police? What if the police were nearby looking for someone who lost a child? If he went there, how would he explain his presence? On the other hand, he couldn't completely relax until I returned with the child. After all, it's the middle of winter now. When he was anxiously waiting at home, only to find that I returned without the child, what would he feel? Just thinking about it made me feel incredibly relieved. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that I left the mall carrying a few shopping bags, not in a hurry to go back. I first found a clinic nearby to have my split nail properly bandaged by a doctor, and only then did I hail a taxi. By the time I returned to the house in my memory, it was almost 9 p.m. As soon as I arrived downstairs, from a distance, I saw Jian Yan pacing anxiously. It seems he noticed me, as he hurried over, his face filled with anxiety. If it were the past me, seeing this scene might have been quite touching, but now, the first thing I noticed was the eager look in his eyes as they darted to my arm. What a pity, the thing I brought back wasn't a child, but beautiful clothes. Ching Ching, you, what is this? How? Cough, weren't you at the hospital? What are these? In the dim light, when he saw the shopping bags, he nearly lost his ability to speak coherently, repeatedly asking questions. I only realized then how poor his acting was, but back then, I was just too blind and foolish. I bought a few clothes. It's almost New Year, right? I'll show them to you later and see if they look good. By the way, in my previous life, when I was barely surviving in that dilapidated house, I had fantasized that if given the chance, I would unhesitatingly grab a knife and end it all with that father and son. But now, seeing Jian Yan, despite the endless surge of hatred, I acted surprisingly calm and normal. I even felt like chatting with Jian Yan about random things. Only when we got home, and Jian Yan was almost unable to hold back, did I slowly respond to him. Hospital, oh, right, I accidentally split my nail when I got off work, so I went to the hospital to get a number. See, the doctor said it's best to keep it wrapped for 3 days, otherwise, it might get infected. I held up my hand with a tender expression, gently touching the gauze on it. In reality, the nail was only slightly cracked, and there wasn't even any blood. The doctor, at my request, wrapped it up while giving me a look as if I were some kind of strange creature, unable to understand why something that wasn't even a wound needed to be bandaged, but who asked me to be willing. Even a tiny piece of my nail from now on would be more precious than anything of theirs. After I finished speaking, Jian Yan's face seemed to turn a bit pale. When did you go to the hospital? I smiled brightly, looking completely innocent. When I was walking near the Tianzhi Mall, I suddenly received your message then, and I was in a hurry to take my phone out of my bag, but my nail split. So I turned around and went to the hospital. What's wrong? I wasn't lying. Jian Yan had indeed sent me a message, urging me to come home early. He wanted me not to delay on the way and to bring Jiangqi back as soon as possible, but now it had become my perfect excuse. How interesting. Jian Yan's complexion couldn't be described as merely livid anymore. The Tianzhi Mall was just across the street from where he had left Jiangqi. In his mind, he was only a hair's breadth away from achieving his plan. Yet now it had failed due to his own hastening. I watched his expression change repeatedly, and then, as if suddenly remembering something, he rushed to the door with undisguised panic. I smiled as I watched his retreating figure. Indeed, since I didn't bring his son back, it's likely that his son had already been freezing in the cold wind on that deserted road for several hours. How pitiful it is for a baby to be abandoned by its father on a desolate road. Outside the window, snowflakes have already begun to fall now. It is I who waits at home, unlike Jiang Yan, who is anxious. My waiting was filled with joy and anticipation. I think this is just the beginning. In my previous life, I had been puzzled by women who devoted most of their lives to revenge with great determination. Why must one drag oneself into revenge? Why not cut it cleanly and move forward? All I want now is to laugh at the foolishness of that time. I have been reborn, with a great life, career, and a large inheritance left by my parents, but my hatred will never be resolved. This hatred will turn me into a demon, so I won't divorce Jiang Yan, and I won't go through the so-called clean break. I will stay here, watching them with these eyes, guiding them with these hands, making sure they all live more painfully and miserably than I did in my past life. After that night, Jiang Yan didn't come back for a full 3 days. When I called him with concern, he only responded stiffly and vaguely, saying he was at the hospital. And faintly, I could hear a woman crying in the background. My hand suddenly clenched, and then I slowly smiled. Could it be that woman? How could that woman not know about Jiang Yan's plan? Now, the plan has failed, and their child was even sent to the hospital by Jiang Yan's own cruelty. Cry, you all deserve it. What does it have to do with me? On the 4th day, Jiang Yan suddenly called me and asked me to go to the hospital. Hearing his hesitant voice on the other end, I considerately didn't press for details and quickly agreed. When I arrived at the hospital, Jiang Yan told me that his sister had found a nearly frozen child on her way home from work. The police couldn't locate the child's parents, so they had to keep the child in the hospital for the time being. He went on and on about how pitiful the child was, and a nurse nearby chimed in. Yes, I can't imagine how heartless the parents must be to abandon a child on a small path in the middle of winter. If they had brought the child in any later, it would have been too late to save them. Even now that they've been saved, this child will have a hard life ahead. Look, the child's throat is so swollen they can't even open it. They might never be able to speak. They've also had a fever for 3 days. Even if they don't end up with brain damage, their development will likely be. Stop talking. Jiang Yan's face turned grim, as if his sore spot had been exposed. Quickly realizing his lapse in composure, he stiffly apologized to the nurse and then turned to me. Ching, I need to talk to you. He said that the child was too pitiful, and he wanted to adopt him. He said that his previous medical checkup report had come out, revealing that he had oligospermia, making it highly unlikely for him to have children in the future. This child's arrival was too coincidental, perhaps a gift from heaven meant for both him and me, he said. I was a bit dazed. In my previous life, he had actually said these words in a different way. It was precisely because he had oligospermia that in my previous life, I never doubted that Jiang Yan and Jiang Qi were biological father and son, and it was precisely because he had oligospermia that now I know, even if Jiang Qi were to become disabled or mentally impaired in the future, he would never give up on him, because Jiang Qi might be the only child he would ever have in this lifetime, let alone the fact that this child was born from the woman he loved. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, my heart turning ice cold. Since you love so deeply, why involve innocent me, ruining my entire life? Yes, sister-in-law, Jiang Chenhua, Jiang Yan's sister who had not appeared in the previous life, also came to persuade. You always need a child to take care of you in old age. Since brother likes this child, why not keep him? As I watched her flickering eyes while speaking, I suddenly realized that in the previous life's deception, she might have been aware as well. Recalling her fondness and intimacy with Jiang Qi in the previous life, a surge of sorrow and absurdity suddenly welled up within me. In my previous life, I was the one who brought Jiang Chenhua out of the remote countryside, helped her go to school, lent her money for the down payment, and assisted her in settling down in the city. But what did I get in return? A trap where they treated me like a fool, leading me around in circles. Back then, I was like an old ox working day and night, diligently devoting all my time, money, and love, only to be drained completely and discarded like trash. Was it really because I was too foolish? My hand slowly clenched. No, I said. Their expressions showed they hadn't expected me, usually so kind and considerate, to refuse so bluntly. I frowned, pretending to be displeased. Even if you want to adopt, you can't adopt a child like this. Didn't you hear what the nurse just said? This child might end up brain damaged from the fever. What use is a child like that, even if you raise them? Don't blame me for being harsh. But, Jiang Yan, Chenhua, I know you're kind-hearted. If you Want to blame anyone, blame the child's heartless parents. You've already done more than enough by bringing him to the hospital. As I watched Jiang Yan's twisted expression, before I could even feel a sense of satisfaction, I suddenly heard a sharp clatter. A porcelain cup rolled out from behind the curtain nearby. A woman with a similarly bad expression came out from behind the curtain, forcing a smile into my view, and crouched down to pick up the cup from the ground. It was her, the woman. Jiang Qi's biological mother, Jiang Yan's true love. At this moment, she was wearing ill-fitting old clothes, her expression haggard, far from the poised and elegant demeanor I had seen in her previous life. Who is she? I pretended to be puzzled. Jiang Chenhua glanced at her brother's expression and quickly replied, "Sister-in-law, she's my friend. Today, I was with her when we found the child." Hearing this lie that treated me like a fool, I suddenly laughed. Turning my head, I spoke with a tone of sympathy and restraint. "In any case, I will not adopt a fool, let alone a mute. If it were a normal child, I would adopt him without hesitation, treating him as my own. But this one, no." Hearing my disdainful words, the woman lowered her head, her fingers showing prominent veins. As if unaware, I left lightly after speaking, not giving Jiang Yan a chance to say anything. Nor did I spare another glance at the baby on the bed. In his previous life, Jiang Qi was cherished by me, placed at the very tip of my heart, enjoying the finest food, clothing, and possessions. Handsome in appearance, he had won awards in piano and calligraphy, praised by teachers and admired by classmates, making him the renowned campus heartthrob and Prince Charming of the entire school. Yet the Jiang Qi of today is a mute who may very well become a fool. His life is destined to be no longer smooth. Jiang Qi, in this life, your tragedy is not of my making. If you must blame someone, blame your biological parents. At that time, I had no idea that after the little baby on the bed was rescued, the moment he opened his eyes, there was a fleeting look of confusion and panic in them. Jiang Qi from his past life had also been reborn. Sometime after that day, under my threat of divorce if you don't give up, Jiang Yan finally reluctantly abandoned the idea of adopting that child. Instead, Jiang Chenhua adopted him. Interestingly, in this life, the child is still named Jiang Qi, reportedly following the surname of Jiang Chenhua. I pretended to be unaware of the truth, but on the birthday of Jiang Chenhua's daughter, I put the silver bracelet I had promised to buy for her on Jiang Qi's wrist. "Fei, be a good girl. The younger brother is smaller than you, so you should let him have his way. Understand?" I said with a smile. The little girl immediately screamed in frustration, reaching out to snatch it. Why, he's not my brother. He's a bastard, Dad. Get him out. Don't let him take my things." "Fei," Jiang Chenhua hurriedly pulled her away, her face flushing with embarrassment as she scolded. Jiang Yan's expression darkened. Meanwhile, Jiang Chenhua's husband watched with indifference, muttering a few words, likely out of deference to Jiang Yan. I watched the scene with amusement, recalling how Zhao Fei had fawned over Jiang Qi in my past life. Back then, in her eyes, Jiang Qi was her privileged and most admired older brother. But now, to her, he was nothing more than a bastard who would snatch away her belongings. In the end, the matter was resolved when Jiang Yan offered to gift Zhao Fei another bracelet as compensation. Watching his displeased expression, I thought with a hint of amusement, it's still too early for that. The realization that Jiang Qi was reborn came when he was 4 years old. At this time, unlike in her previous life, Jiang Chenhua had already resigned and stayed at home for nearly 4 years to take care of the 2 children. In her previous life, she had already risen to the company's management level by this time. With a gentle and composed demeanor that had gradually settled over the years, she could firmly refuse her husband's request for a second child, all to devote all her love to Zhao Fei. Now, however, she was haggard and bloated, for months pregnant, yet still had to wake up early to buy groceries, cook, and care for her husband who acted like a lord, her increasingly temperamental daughter, and her frail mute adopted son. Jiang Yan clearly cared a great deal about his illegitimate child but didn't seem to care much about his biological sister. I had overheard him more than once, hiding in his room to call Jiang Chenhua, scolding her for not disciplining her daughter properly, which led to Jiang Qi often being bullied by Zhao Fei at her house. "Busy? What are you busy with after quitting your job? I give you 4,000 yuan every month. Isn't that enough to compensate you?" Jiang Yan's voice carried an arrogant sense of entitlement. I found it rather ironic. Jiang Yan was a notoriously stingy person. In my previous life, with me around, he even made me pay for Jiang Qi's exercise books. Now that I was no longer there to bear the burden, the 1/3 of his monthly salary, over 10,000 yuan, that he had to fork out undoubtedly pained him. He no longer felt guilt or gratitude for having his sister raise his child. The private investigator told me that Jiang Yan was saving money to buy a gift for his boss's elderly mother's birthday, hoping to secure a promotion this year. To do this, he had reduced the monthly payment to that woman from 6,000 to 4,000, putting her on the same level as Jiang Qi. I did the math. By the time of the birthday, Jiang Yin would have saved around 40 to 50,000. In his eyes at that time, this was already a substantial budget, but only I knew that Jiang Yan's boss's wife had significant connections, and a gift of 40 to 50,000 meant nothing to them in my past life. I had proactively given him 200,000 to prepare the gift, which greatly impressed his boss. Not long after, Jiang Yin was smoothly promoted to deputy director. This life is destined to be different. I curled the corners of my lips, turning my head. I see Jiang Qi sneaking behind the kitchen door, placing something on the floor before quickly walking away. At that moment, his gaze was sinister and resentful. Nothing like a child's. Jiang Chenhua had a miscarriage. The reason was that Zhao Feifei suddenly slipped while running into the kitchen and crashed hard into Jiang Chenhua, who was busy inside, causing her abdomen to hit the hard countertop directly. She screamed and collapsed on the floor, blood slowly spreading across the ground. The terrified Zhao Feifei was slapped hard across the face by her father. Jiang Chenhua was rushed to the hospital. Everyone else went to the hospital, and only I volunteered to stay at Jiang Chenhua's house to take care of the two children. I first went to the kitchen door to take a look, and sure enough, I noticed a layer of inconspicuous grease in the blood on the floor. It was Jiang Qi. He smeared oil on the floor and then framed Zhao Feifei. I couldn't help but laugh. In his previous life, he was very fond of Zhao Feifei. He even secretly taught her not to follow my example of becoming a housewife after marriage, like a parasite who knows nothing at that time. The disdain in his words made me particularly heartbroken. I stood up lightly and walked toward Jiang Qi's room, deliberately not avoiding Zhao Feifei's line of sight, and leaving the door slightly ajar. Jiang Qi looked surprised when he saw me, and then a hint of anticipation unconsciously flowed from his eyes. What was he expecting? Did he expect me to love and care for him with all my heart, just as I did in my previous life? In the next second, I suddenly realized that this was definitely not the look of a child seeing a relative they had met only a few times. My heart started racing, and I was almost certain that Jiang Qi had also been reborn. I wanted to laugh out loud, grateful for heaven's favor. My nails dug into my flesh as I struggled to calm down and finish the act. Shao Qi, didn't your mom and sister Feifei treat you well? If not, why did I see you smearing something on the ground earlier? And then Feifei suddenly slipped. There's still a layer of oil on the floor now. Tell auntie, did you do something? Jiang Qi's eyes showed a hint of panic. He couldn't speak, his hands flailing about as he tried to explain. It's so ridiculous. In my previous life, I poured so much effort into raising him, only to end up with a good-for-nothing who couldn't even keep a petty scheme to himself properly. Did he think no one would suspect a 4-year-old? Behind the door, Zhao Feifei, eavesdropping, could no longer hold back her anger and stormed in, slapping Jiang Qi across the face, sending him stumbling backward. Bastard, mongrel, how dare you frame me? She almost immediately believed what I said, unleashing all her panic and fear onto Jiang Qi. Jiang Qi's strength was no match for Zhao Feifei, who was already a big child, and his eyes were filled with resentment. I think I know the source of his resentment. As I had guessed, even though Jiang Chenhua knew Jiang Qi was her biological nephew, his life was still not easy. Jiang Chenhua's husband did not like this boy who was not of his own blood. With his support and indulgence, Zhao Feifei not only took all the good things Jiang Yin bought for Jiang Qi but also played pranks on him from time to time. For example, she would tell Jiang Chenhua that she had changed his diaper when she hadn't, leaving Jiang Qi to spend the night in a soiled diaper, or she would mix flour into Jiang Qi's milk powder, or she would draw a turtle on Jiang Qi's face with a marker because Jiang Qi's throat was completely unable to make a sound. It often wasn't until his face turned red and his skin turned blue, clearly showing discomfort, that Jiang Chenhua would notice. She would then notify Jiang Yin to take him to the hospital while simultaneously scolding and hitting her daughter. What she didn't know was that precisely because of this, Zhao Feifei would grow to dislike Jiang Qi even more, bullying and humiliating him even more severely. And in his previous life, when had Jiang Qi ever suffered such humiliation? These 4 years of rebirth felt like a nightmare to him, and Jiang Chenhua's entire family became the targets of his resentment. As soon as he grew old enough to have some ability to act, he immediately seized the opportunity to carry out his revenge. What a fine spectacle of dogs biting dogs. I watched Jiang Qi's disheveled appearance for a while before casually reaching out to stop him. Seeing the grateful yet aggrieved look in Jiang Qi's eyes, I felt disgusted while inwardly sneering with contempt. Don't worry. This is just the beginning. Jiang Chenhua's child could not be saved. It is said it was a boy. Zhao Feifei indeed exposed Jiang Qi's scheme to frame her. However, she had no evidence, as too much time had passed, and it was quite normal for oil stains to be present near the kitchen. Jiang Yin naturally defended his son, harshly scolding Zhao Feifei, accusing her of being young but vicious and framing her younger brother, showing no regard for the fact that she was his own niece. Amidst the torrent of accusations, a hint of madness gradually crept into Zhao Feifei's eyes. Jiang Qi, who had been blinded by Zhao Feifei, was rushed to the hospital. When I heard the news, I dialed a number. It's time, soon. A video was sent to me from the other end. In the footage, it was clear to see that woman, Jiang Qi's biological mother, Qi Shui, holding Jiang Qi and crying, only to be quickly comforted in Jiang Yan's arms. Anyone who saw this scene, along with Jiang Qi's resemblance to them, would have no doubt that they were a family. This video was about to be passed, through a private detective, into the hands of another man, Qi Shui's husband, a genuine street loafer and a recently released ex-convict. The private investigator told me that Qi Shui and Jiang Yan came from the same rural village, and they were each other's first love. Later, Jiang Yan fell for the money in my family and started dating me on campus, while Qi Shui was sold by her parents to her current husband. After her husband was imprisoned for assault, Qi Shui moved to the city, where she worked to make a living. After that, this pair of adulterers unexpectedly met each other and began their affair, giving birth to their love child, Jiang Qi. Next, the private investigator diligently reported their situation to me. With my covert assistance, Qi Shui's husband finally found her. The man with a menacing face, after watching the video, was about to grab a knife and seek revenge on Jiang Yan. Qi Shui, kneeling down and pleading desperately, managed to stop him, but then he demanded at least 500,000 yuan in compensation. 500,000. Even if Jiang Yan were to sell everything he owns now, he wouldn't be able to come up with that amount. So, Jiang Yan, who had been giving me the cold shoulder for years because I refused to adopt Jiang Qi, finally came to me for help. Of course, his excuse was that he needed to give a gift to his boss, which was why he had to borrow money from me. If you're not at ease, I'll write you an IOU. He held his head high, but his sidelong glances kept darting towards me, hoping I would show understanding and waive the need for an IOU. I laughed and threw the video in his face. Jiang Yan, I want a divorce from you. Not only do I want a divorce from Jiang Yan, but I also intend to reclaim all the money Jiang Yan has given to Jiang Qi and Qi Shuihua over the years. According to the law, my parents' estate belongs solely to me, including the house we currently live in. As for the salaries of Jiang Yan and myself, they are considered joint marital property and will be split equally upon divorce. My salary is 2,000 less than Jiang Yan's, so in the end, I actually come out ahead. I'll just consider it compensation for the emotional distress over the years. Right now, Jiang Yan is probably feeling like misfortune never comes singly and is extremely overwhelmed. On one side, there's the threat from Qi Shui's husband, a truly ruthless man who has served time in prison. On another side, there's the cost of Jiang Qi's medical treatment. Jiang Chenhua can't afford it, and her husband is unwilling to pay, so naturally, the burden falls on him. Finally, there's my demand for divorce. The private investigator has gathered countless pieces of evidence of Jiang Yan's infidelity over the years, not to mention the existence of Jiang Qi, such a big illegitimate child. Even if we go to court, I'm practically guaranteed to win half the case, but I'm not in a hurry yet. No sooner had I filed for divorce from Jiang Yan and submitted the petition to the court than I went abroad, without revealing my location to anyone. Even a rabbit will bite when cornered. In this life, of course, I need to be smarter, to prevent Jiang Yan from being driven to desperate measures, like hiring a hitman or even striking a deal with Qi Shui's husband to have me killed, thereby smoothly taking over my assets. Of course, in the end, I didn't forget to instruct the private detective to stir the pot and muddy the waters between them. The tipping point began at the birthday banquet for Jiang Yan's boss's elderly mother. During this period, Jiang Yan was so unsettled by various matters that he never noticed the extra ingredient I had instructed the private detective to add to the gift box he sent: high-definition photos of his boss's affair. According to the private detective's relay, the moment the gift box was opened, Jiang Yan's boss's face immediately turned ashen, and his wife publicly slapped him, turning a perfectly good birthday banquet into a chaotic mess and making it a laughingstock. Jiang Yan was soon fired, and it said that his boss vowed to ensure he would never find work in the industry again. The unfortunate Jiang Yan was confronted by Qi Shui's husband on his way home. Finally pushed to his limit, he got into an argument with the man, mocking him for failing to win Qi Shui's heart. In a fit of rage, the man severed Jiang Yan's genitals with a knife and stomped on them viciously. Tired of the jokes, and with the court session about to begin, I returned home gracefully with my bodyguards at the bedside. Still unable to get out of bed, Jiang Yan begged me to spare him. Considering our past marital bond, I chuckled and whispered close to his ear, "I hear your sister refuses to take care of your illegitimate child anymore. It's understandable, though. A child who is both mute and blind, even if raised, would just be a lifelong burden." Jiang Yan, blame yourself for being too greedy and ruthless, abandoning such a young infant on the roadside. You No, when Jiangqi grows up, will he sue you for abandonment? Jiang Yan's eyes widened, his face turning red and white, and in an instant, everything became clear to him. He looked at me in disbelief. You knew back then? Yes, I said with a smile that made him want to vomit blood, but I didn't do anything. It was you who crippled your only son. You are so vicious. Qishua's voice came from behind. Filled with resentment and weakness, she had heard my words and was clearly deeply affected. I glanced at her indifferently. At this moment, she looked even older and more haggard than when I saw her 4 years ago. She was so thin she resembled a skeleton, with purplish bruises on her face. What? Wasn't this plan concocted by both of you? You two personally harmed your own son. TSK, what a pity. I shook my head with a sigh, leaving in a glamorous manner surrounded by my bodyguards. 12 years later, having long shed everything, I returned from a vacation in France. The same private detective from before informed me of the circumstances these people had faced over the years. Not long after Qishua's husband was imprisoned again for assault, Jiangqi was returned to Jiang Yan's custody by Jiang Chenhua, so Jiang Yan and Qishua rented a shabby single room in the urban village, earning a living by doing odd jobs, and used the hard-earned money to pay for sign language and braille classes for Jiangqi. Jiangqi, however, was not grateful to them. He naturally knew why he had ended up this way. In his previous life, having gained everything, he could have been an intimate family with his biological parents without any reservations. Now, having lost everything, he blamed all his problems on Jiang Yan and Qishua of today. Jiangqi, due to his violent and gloomy temperament, almost couldn't graduate from a special school. It was only through Jiang Yan and Qishua exhausting their wallets and pulling strings that Jiangqi managed to get his diploma. But this diploma couldn't get Jiangqi through the door of any company, big or small. Even when trying to pick up odd jobs at a convenience store, he was looked down upon for being blind and mute. He can wash dishes, you can rest assured, he washes them really clean. Inside the restaurant, I sat in a corner, watching with admiration as Jiang Yan and Qishua hunched over, humbly recommending Jiangqi to the boss. Jiangqi stood behind them, tightly pursing his lips. His untrimmed hair covered his eyes, making him look particularly gloomy. Hey, Feifei, look at that person, his eyes are so scary. A curious and familiar voice pointed, and it turned out to be Lily, Jiangqi's wife from his previous life. Next to her, Zhao Feifei seemed to see something dirty and disdainfully said, Tisk, what's so interesting about a blind man? Let me tell you, time seemed to loop. This time, it was Lily lying in a pool of blood. Jiangqi drew his knife and swung it again to slash at Zhao Feifei. Beside him, his expression terrifyingly frenzied. This time, he only managed to stab Zhao Feifei in the forearm before being restrained by the others, who finally reacted. Watching him struggle hysterically, and seeing Jiang Yan and the other person standing nearby with numb expressions, looking as if they were 60-year-olds, I finally felt a sense of peace in my heart. With no more ripples, I knew that my new, carefree life had finally begun. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. In my previous life, my aunt found a painted pottery basin. I could tell at a glance that the basin was unusual and advised her to throw it away, but she refused, so I secretly threw it away when she wasn't paying attention. As it turned out, the person who picked it up quickly rose to fame and fortune, driving luxury cars, buying villas, and becoming a wealthy local figure. When my aunt and her family found out, they were furious, blaming me for throwing away their chance at immense wealth and demanding compensation. Finally, they set a fire in my home, causing my entire family to die tragically. But they didn't know that the basin required pain to bring wealth, and the backlash was extremely terrifying. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my aunt picked up the painted pottery basin. Look how beautiful this basin is. I plan to use it as a flower pot. Looking at my aunt holding a painted pottery basin and smilingly showing it to us, I knew I had been reborn. Seeing her smiling face, the scene of my entire family's tragic death in my previous life suddenly flashed into my mind. My heart ached with a throbbing pain, a surge of hatred rushed to the top of my head, and I almost wanted to push her, to shove her down the stairs. My aunt didn't notice anything unusual about me at all, not even my mom and the others did. They were still looking at the painted pottery basin in my aunt's hand, thinking it looked quite nice. But just like in my past life, I could tell at a glance that this painted pottery basin was very eerie. It features a rare painted design on its inner wall, consisting of two symmetrical human-faced fish patterns. I have studied metaphysics and history, and I know it was used as a coffin lid for burying children in ancient times. It is both a treasure basin and a devouring basin. In my past life, I advised my aunt to throw it away, but she refused. She even stomped her feet and said, "Why throw it away when it's perfectly fine? A flower pot costs dozens of dollars." I couldn't persuade her, so while she was cooking, I secretly took the pot and threw it into the community trash bin. Afterward, she didn't chase after me to hit me, but she did scold me a few times. That was until she heard that a family in the community had picked up that pot. The family said it was a heaven-sent treasure basin, and from that day on, they made a huge fortune. First, they bought luxury cars, then a grand villa, becoming wealthy in the area. My aunt only then remembered that the painted pottery basin was the treasure basin, but I had thrown it away. She told my uncle and their 2 children, then stormed into my house in a rage, saying I had thrown away their immense wealth and demanding compensation. My mom was so angry with them that she had a sudden heart attack and collapsed on the sofa. And my dad was also beaten to the ground. I hurriedly explained, "I threw the basin away because it was eerie, otherwise, you would have died. Please, get my parents to the hospital quickly." But they didn't believe me. My uncle even rushed up to me and slapped me across the face. "You ignorant little brat, what do you know?" My aunt scolded me. "If you hadn't thrown that basin away, our family would already be living in a big villa and enjoying a good life. Who would still be stuck in this shabby neighborhood?" Even my cousin Jenny accused me. "You threw away my life as a wealthy heiress. If it weren't for you, I could have married a rich second-generation heir as a lady of high status." My cousin Leo even slapped me. "If you hadn't thrown away that treasure bowl, I would have married my goddess long ago. Now, she's married to some rich old man." One by one, they all came to blame me, and suddenly I saw that my parents were already unconscious. Evil thoughts arose in their hearts. They actually contemplated murder. My aunt and cousin held me down, while my cousin tied me up all over, and my uncle poured gasoline. When they reached my doorstep, they threw in a lighter. My family of 3 tragically died in that fire. My aunt paused for a moment as she spoke, then, with a strange expression, she looked at me and said, "Lola, this time you won't be able to throw away my treasure basin again." My parents looked at me with confusion, not understanding what it meant, but I was suddenly jolted. It turned out that not only had I been reborn, but my aunt had also been reborn. This sentence was clearly a test for me. Realizing this, I immediately said, "Auntie, what are you talking about? Why would I ever throw away your basin?" Auntie still looked at me with a wary expression, but I didn't want her to know that I had also been reborn, so I decided to wait and see. For now, to avoid raising her suspicions, I had to pretend to advise her just like in my previous life. "But I really think this basin is unusual. Auntie, you shouldn't take it home." Just a faint remark, not a word more. Hearing this, my aunt's expression finally returned to normal, thinking she was the only one who had been reborn. Then she immediately hugged the basin in her arms. "What's so strange about a basin? I don't care. No one is taking it away from me." My parents muttered, "We really don't understand. What's so special about a basin anyway?" My aunt argued, "What do you know? By the time you understand, it'll be too late. Just watch as my family becomes richer than yours." After saying that, she happily carried the painted pottery basin back to her own home. My family and my aunt live in the same residential community. Since my grandparents only had 2 daughters, the factory where my grandfather worked once offered a benefit, allocating 2 old and small apartments in this community for him. After they passed away, it became 1 apartment for my mom and 1 for my aunt. Both my mom and my aunt got married during difficult times, so they both lived here, but thanks to my dad's hard work over the years, and my substantial income from working full-time in self-media, we've already bought a 3-bedroom apartment in a newly built development in the city, and it's currently being renovated. And my uncle, because he enjoys eating, drinking, and having fun, squandered all the family's wealth. To this day, the 4 of them still haven't managed to move out. My aunt's relationship with my mother is sometimes good and sometimes bad. When things are good, she comes to our house to freeload meals. When she's jealous that our family is wealthier than theirs and envies my mother for having a better life, she ignores us. In her previous life, it was just as well that she didn't know this painted pottery basin could bring wealth, but she found out later. This time, with the chance to finally become wealthy, how could she let it slip away? Actually, I almost couldn't resist telling her the method to get money from this painted pottery basin just now. As long as I find a way to hurt myself, that basin will keep spitting out money. But I was afraid she would become suspicious, so I decided not to say anything. After a week without any news from her house, I thought maybe she couldn't find a way or had given up. Unexpectedly, the next day my mom received a call from my aunt, saying she wanted to treat our whole family to a meal. My mother was very puzzled. "It's so strange. Your aunt has always been extremely stingy. I've known her for decades and never once has she offered to treat me to a meal. The sun must be rising from the west today." My father looked at his phone and nodded in agreement. Seeing the two of them still alive and well beside me, I felt an inexplicable sense of happiness. After all, the image of their tragic deaths in my previous life still lingered in my mind. I explained to my mom, "Auntie might have found some money." My mom glanced at me, looking quite convinced. Probably, otherwise, how could someone who usually splits every penny in two be so generous? The restaurant Auntie took us to was a mid to high-end one in our city. The per-person cost was around $580. This level of spending is something even my family rarely experiences. By the time we entered the private room, their family of 3 or 4 was already seated at the large table waiting for us. My aunt and her husband were dressed to impress, one in a suit and tie, the other in a stylish dress that looked freshly bought, and my cousin Jenny was no longer wearing cheap street market clothes. Instead, she was dressed in something that looked like it cost a few $100s. My cousin Leo has started dressing much more neatly. He's no longer the sloppy little rascal he used to be. So, is this painted pottery basin spitting out money? Looking at these murderers who killed my entire family in my past life, my hatred is hard to suppress. I wish they would empty the painted pottery basin right now and then die from the backlash seeing us come in. My aunt threw the menu in front of my mother with a showy expression. "Here, order whatever you want." Before we could react, my uncle tossed a pack of cigarettes in front of my dad. "Damn, who knew cigarettes were this good? You haven't tried them either, have you? Here, have a pack." With such an arrogant attitude, my parents' expressions instantly turned sour. One is holding the menu without looking at it, the other is staring at that pack of cigarettes without moving. I thought that was the end of it, but then Jenny also tossed a bag to me, saying it was a branded one and quite expensive. I took a look at this unknown brand and thought to myself, seeing that Leo was about to show off something as well, I quickly stood up and asked, "Auntie, has your family struck it rich? Why is everyone so extravagant?" I handed her a stepping stone, and my aunt immediately stood up, beaming with pride as she boasted, "I'm telling you, I have such good luck. Last time, I found a treasure basin. You have no idea, as long as you make a wish to it, it keeps spitting out money. As much as you want." I sneered inwardly. Sure, it spits out money, but is it really that simple to just make a wish? If it's that simple, why not just buy a villa, drive a luxury car, and become wealthy? How could it be the awkward situation of appearing both rich and poor now? My parents definitely wouldn't believe it. My mom, "Little sister, are you crazy? What era is this now? And you still believe in this? Haven't you been scammed?" My dad, "Did you run into a pyramid scheme or something?" Seeing that my parents didn't believe her, and she was determined to prove to me that the painted pottery basin she found was a treasure bowl, not something eerie, my aunt immediately stomped her feet in frustration. How could that be? The money really came from that bowl. In just 3 days, it gave us tens of thousands of dollars. Jenny also stood up. "Uncle, can't you see how wealthy we look? I'm young, but I'd know if I ran into a pyramid scheme." Leo sneered. "Sis, don't bother with them. If they don't believe it, forget it. Let's keep a low profile and make a fortune." I chimed in at the right moment. Turns out I was mistaken. I almost mistook the treasure basin for something sinister. With my confirmation, my parents didn't say anything more, because they know I have a talent for this and that I wouldn't misjudge. Seeing my parents remain silent, my aunt immediately became smug again. "I told you it must be a treasure basin." At that moment, I suddenly noticed a bruise on her neck and casually asked, "Aunt, what happened to your neck?" My aunt, who had been bragging nonstop, suddenly paused, realizing I had seen it, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. My uncle suddenly stepped in to defuse the situation. "Oh, that was from me kissing her." At that point, I stopped pressing the issue and pretended to believe their explanation. "Keep hiding it. Just keep hiding it like this." The meal was extremely awkward, but I was very happy and even ordered several signature dishes, the most expensive ones. They slapped their distressed faces, but to save face for themselves, they still smiled and urged me to eat more. When it came time to pay the bill, oh dear, it was over $6,000. They ended up pushing the per-person cost to over $800. Their faces twitched again. After all, this money was earned at the cost of their pain. This was truly a painful loss. After a short while, we moved into our new home. My boyfriend Kevin helped us move together. We've been dating for 2 or 3 years, and our parents have long since discussed it. We were just about to talk about marriage. We planned to get engaged half a year after we moved into our new home. On the day of the move, we unexpectedly ran into my aunt and her whole family in the neighborhood. They seemed to have stepped up a notch in class, almost like wealthy people now. Jenny was quite surprised to see me, carrying a designer handbag and swaying her hips in a bodycon dress as she walked up to us, with a haughty expression. She said, "Cousin, didn't expect this, did you? We're going to Be neighbors again. We just bought a large flat here last week, paid in full, and it's already renovated, ready to move in with just our bags. I glanced at my aunt and the others, all of whom had joyful expressions on their faces. I casually responded, "Well, congratulations to you all then." Beside me, Kevin suddenly lit up. "You must be Jenny, right? Long time no see, you've changed so much." It didn't bother me as much when they were showing off in front of me, but Kevin's words made me feel extremely uncomfortable all over. As my relatives, they have all met Kevin, but at that time, they had no money and naturally didn't stand out. Now they all have money to dress themselves up, and suddenly they look completely different. But Kevin didn't notice my displeased expression. Instead, his eyes lit up as he looked at Jenny. Jenny also sensed it and immediately covered her mouth to laugh. "Brother-in-law, you're so sweet. I'm really happy to hear that." Kevin blushed, only then remembering that I was nearby, he glanced at me and, seeing my displeased expression, quickly composed himself. I walked ahead with a grim expression, carrying the things. Jenny shouted after me, "Cousin, let's celebrate the housewarming together." When I mentioned that my aunt had also moved into our neighborhood, my parents were stunned, especially my mom, who knew exactly how much my aunt's family could afford. She couldn't believe it. How did my sister suddenly manage to pay in full for a large apartment? My dad was also puzzled. Exactly. Look at how hard my daughter and I worked to earn the money to buy this one apartment. They don't even run a business or anything, so how did they suddenly become so wealthy? At that moment, Kevin suddenly chimed in, "Maybe they had a windfall." I shot him a glare, thinking about his behavior earlier, and angrily hit him. Then I asked him angrily, "Why were you looking at my cousin with such a bright expression just now? What do you mean by that?" Kevin's face turned pale, and he glared at me, saying, "What nonsense, I've only met her a few times, she's not as pretty as you, so what interest could I possibly have?" Seeing him flustered and eager to explain, I felt a bit better inside. My mom also chimed in, "You two are getting engaged soon, so don't stir up any trouble." Kevin immediately thumped his chest and promised, "Auntie, don't worry, I'll marry no one but Lola in this lifetime." My parents couldn't help but laugh when they saw him like that. A few days later was the day of our housewarming banquet. We had reserved a table at the hotel in advance. However, when we arrived at the hotel to welcome our relatives and friends, we saw my aunt and her whole family also greeting guests at the hotel entrance. Jenny, wearing a goose yellow strapless dress, actually gave Kevin a flirtatious glance when she saw him. Kevin's eyes lit up at first, then a hint of embarrassment flickered across them. Because my mom and my aunt share mutual friends and relatives, everyone my mom invited was intercepted by my aunt. Our reserved table was on the second floor, while theirs was on the third. When my aunt mentioned the third floor, those relatives happily followed them, simply because the second floor cost $2,000 per table, while the third floor was $3,500 per table. In the end, only my mom's close friends were left on her side, while most of the guests were my dad's relatives and friends. This time, my mom was truly angry. She pulled my aunt aside and questioned her, "Little sister, what do you mean by this? Why are you trying to steal my guests?" Auntie toyed with her bright red fingernails and said casually, "Sis, you're not being fair. Those relatives are ours too, so how can you say I'm stealing them? Besides, what does it have to do with me if they prefer the banquet on the third floor? It's your own fault for being so stingy and only being able to afford the second floor." This made my mom so angry that she scolded my aunt for the first time. "We're stingy. If we're stingy, why do you keep coming to our house to eat for free? I don't care why your family suddenly became rich, but even so, you shouldn't act like this, should you?" My uncle happened to step out of the elevator and, hearing my mom say that, immediately stormed over to her. "What's wrong with how we live? Isn't this world all about the rich? Now that we have money, we can spend it however we want." I quickly rushed to my mother's side, shielding her behind me, and glared at the couple, saying coldly, "So you think having a bit of dirty money makes you all high and mighty? Ha, the money you've made is all filthy. Be careful, you might not even know how you'll end up dead." My aunt and the others immediately turned pale at my words. As they moved, I could see the bruised skin exposed on their bodies. This is clearly risking one's life for money. Jenny and Leo came down at this moment, noticing her parents' unusual expressions. Jenny immediately turned her fire on me. "Cousin, did you say something to my parents?" I glanced at her neck and arms, not even sparing her calves. She was quite fair and clean, with nothing there. I spread my hands and said, "No, I was just teaching them how to speak properly." Her expression changed slightly. She was about to scold me, but after glancing behind me, she immediately put on a pitiful look and said, "Cousin, my mom is still your aunt, and they are your elders. How can you lecture your elders like that?" At that moment, Kevin, who had walked over to me, asked in disbelief, "Lola, how can you be so rude?" I hadn't even said anything, yet he started apologizing on my behalf. "Aunt, uncle, please don't take it to heart with Lola, she's just being immature." "Shut up, who gave you the right to speak for me?" I immediately snapped at him, still fuming. I questioned him further. "They disrespected my parents, so why should I respect them?" Kevin looked at me with disbelief and said, "Lola, how did you become so unreasonable? You're calling me by my full name now." My mom couldn't understand either and asked Kevin, "Kevin, how could you say that about my daughter?" My dad's face darkened even more. "My daughter is not for you to question." Kevin's face turned pale and then flushed, his gaze was wandering, occasionally glancing at Jenny as if seeking her approval. "I see, he's got his eye on Jenny." Our family felt particularly uncomfortable during this housewarming dinner. My parents felt that our relatives and friends were being taken away by my aunt, which not only hurt their pride but also made them very angry, and I feel like I'm about to have a breakup. The next day, I saw Kevin pacing back and forth at the entrance of the neighborhood. Just as I was about to walk over, I noticed him looking in another direction, and it was Jenny who was walking toward him. After they met up, they walked out of the neighborhood together, behaving intimately. At this moment, I don't know whether I feel more anger or sadness, actually. Ever since the last time Kevin's eyes lit up when he saw Jenny, I had a vague feeling that it might be over between him and me, so I think the anger has already overshadowed the sadness. But of all people, why did he have to choose Jenny? I immediately took out my phone and sent him 2 words, "break up," then I blocked and deleted him in one go. Next, I went home and told my parents that the wedding preparations could be called off. I also asked them to explain everything clearly to Kevin's parents. Not long after, both of his parents called me one after another to persuade me not to break up. At first, I was a little touched, thinking they had accepted me and were trying to reconcile us, but to my surprise, when I firmly insisted on breaking up, they stopped trying to persuade me. Instead, they asked my family to return the money they had given earlier for the engagement preparations. There are also the gifts and money transfers Kevin gave me before. Altogether, it adds up to about $30,000. I was so shocked that my eyes widened, unable to believe it. One moment they were the image of perfect future in-laws, and the next, they turned into stingy uncle and aunt. The key point is that Kevin never showed up from start to finish. After I calculated all the money, I asked them to come and get it. I thought only Kevin's parents would do something so shameful, but I didn't expect Kevin and Jenny to come too. As soon as they entered the door, my mom couldn't help but scold Jenny, "You grew up with your sister. How could you steal her boyfriend? Aren't you ashamed?" My dad got even angrier. "Now that you have some money, why don't you go find a rich man instead of eyeing your sister's boyfriend?" Jenny swung her LV bag dismissively and said, "Why would I need to find a rich man when I have money? I definitely want someone handsome who also does whatever I say." As it happens, Kevin is exactly that kind of man, and he suits my taste perfectly. Kevin's parents chimed in at this point. "Jenny is such a sensible child, she just started dating my son and already gave us branded skincare products, premium cigarettes, and alcohol, unlike you, who's been dating for so long and hasn't bought us anything." Jenny even said she doesn't need a betrothal gift and will bring a dowry of $500,000 plus a house. Anyone with half a brain would know who to choose. It's not that I never bought them anything before, they just forgot now. In their eyes, Jenny is just a wealthy heiress who only wants their son, which greatly satisfies their vanity. My parents wouldn't listen anymore and coldly ordered them to leave. "Then I wish you happiness. Please get out of my house." I gave them the money, didn't cry, didn't get angry, but instead laughed and said, "That's great. Luckily, I found out how disgusting your family is before getting married. Heaven has been so good to me. I hope you never come begging to me in the future, because even if you kneel until you die, I won't save you." They all held their stomachs and laughed uncontrollably, as if they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Kevin even said, "Lola, have you lost your mind after your breakup? Us begging you? Keep dreaming." Jenny laughed so hard that tears streamed down her face. "My dear cousin seems to have gone crazy. Ha ha ha, laugh all you want. The more you laugh now, the uglier you'll cry later in this life." Jenny didn't go after a wealthy second-generation rich kid. Instead, she stole my poor boyfriend, but Leo managed to find his goddess from his previous life as he wished. When Leo ran into me in the neighborhood with her, I recognized her at first glance. She was the campus belle who had bullied me in school, Linda. So Jenny's goddess turned out to be her. Although Linda is very beautiful, she comes from a poor family and is extremely materialistic and greedy. Even during her university years, it was rumored that she was with a wealthy older man, so it was only natural that in her previous life, she married that older man. This time, she encountered Leo, who is both wealthy and relentlessly pursuing her. Even a fool would know that choosing Leo is the better option, but I know all too well where my aunt's money comes from. Linda is like a bottomless pit that can never be filled. How can their family ever satisfy her? I didn't want to deal with the annoying Leo and Linda, so I turned around to leave. Unexpectedly, the sharp-eyed Linda still spotted me. She grabbed Leo's hand, pointed at me, and said, "I think I just saw Lola, the one I used to bully." She still wants to avoid me when she sees me, ha ha ha. Hearing her words, I didn't walk away. Instead, I turned back, stood in front of her, and without a word, slapped her across the face. Thinking about how she used to bully me and the recent humiliation my aunt and her family brought upon us, I hit Linda. After all, slapping her not only got me revenge but also indirectly gave Leo a slap in the face. Linda was stunned by my slap, covering her face and looking at me in disbelief, angrily shouting, "Lola, how dare you hit me?" Leo also stared at me wide-eyed. "How dare you hit my girlfriend?" I clapped my hands and laughed. "Just because she used to bully me, what's wrong with hitting her once? I even feel like hitting her again." Leo was so furious he raised his hand to hit me too. I'm not afraid at all, and I directly brought up Linda's dark past. "You think just because you have money, you can get a goddess? But this goddess of yours is a bit dirty. She's long been used up by older men. If it weren't for your money, you wouldn't even get to touch her feet. You don't actually think she likes you too, do you?" Linda's face turned pale and then flushed, like a chameleon. It made me feel so satisfied inside, but I didn't expect Jenny to remain unmoved. Instead, she calmly said, "That was her past. After being with me, she won't be like that anymore. I won't give her the chance, and I'll give her plenty of money." "It's really disgusting." Linda's face instantly brightened, and she immediately hugged Leo's arm, showering him with kisses. Her words were as sweet as honey. "Thank you, darling. No matter if you're poor or rich in the future, you'll always be my favorite. I'll love you forever." I felt nauseated and immediately left the scene. Because both children have found partners, my aunt and uncle were so happy that they generously bought a large apartment for each of Jenny and her brother in our neighborhood. Then they quickly set the dates for their weddings. They also sent us wedding invitations. I don't know where they got the nerve, considering the two families had already fallen out. Only then did I realize that they must have done it just to beat us. They wanted to outdo our family in every way and embarrass us. They made the wedding ceremony extremely grand. The two siblings held their weddings on the same day at the same 5-star hotel. Jenny didn't ask Kevin for a bride price and instead brought a dowry of $500,000 plus an apartment. Leo gave Linda a bride price of $1 million, an apartment, and a car. The wedding was planned by a famous team, and the entire event cost no less than $1 million. With such an outrageously lavish wedding, the aunt's family became the talk of the neighborhood. Occasionally, when I run into them on the street, they always look radiant with joy, especially when they see the envious looks from others. They become even more pleased with themselves. Perhaps I am the only one in this world who sees the horror behind their false prosperity, because I notice that not only are the couple, my aunt and her husband, covering their bodies tightly, but Jenny and her brother also have bruises on their bodies. Indeed, needing so much money, just relying on the two of them hurting themselves. How could the painted pottery bowl possibly produce that much money? So, Jenny and her brother also started getting involved. They not only dare to target places others can't see, not daring to touch the face, afraid that others might notice. If I didn't know the strangeness behind this, I probably wouldn't have given it much thought. Our family didn't attend the weddings of that brother and sister. None of their family members are good. They all seem to have a grudge against me. I definitely won't flatter them just to make them look good. Their family's money sure comes quickly. They just spent a considerable amount of money on their two children's weddings, and only a month later, they went on to set up a company for them. I heard this news while taking a stroll in the neighborhood. I heard the company is quite large, and it's jointly operated by Jenny and the other three. This has caused quite a stir in the neighborhood. Everyone is guessing the background of my aunt and her family. How is it that they have an endless supply of money? My parents also found it strange after hearing about it, but they couldn't find an answer. But I still didn't tell them about the painted pottery basin that spits out money, so that my mom doesn't remind my aunt, in case they stop at this point. That won't do. I thought they had money, and as long as I didn't run into them, it would be fine, but I didn't expect that even if I didn't provoke them, they would come to my house. We have a small shop near the residential area, and my aunt actually bought that storefront, and they made us move out as quickly as possible. The first time, we didn't understand. We thought since that shop wasn't making much profit anyway, and we were planning to change locations, so we moved. We rented a storefront in a more bustling area, and my mom went to manage the shop. But less than half a month later, my aunt and her family bought that shop at a high price and made us move out again. At that moment, my mother was stunned, but I could see it clearly. This was purely meant to cause us trouble, targeting us. This time, I didn't hold back. When they came to tell us to move out, I said coldly, "We'll move out this time, but if you dare do this again, I'll make sure you live a life worse than death. The older generation is gone. If all of you die, your property will still be ours. My aunt was so angry she was stomping her feet, cursing me. You little wretch. How dare you curse us to die? How could the property of our whole family possibly end up in your hands? My uncle also scolded. Although my parents are gone and I have no siblings, I have sons and daughters. There's no way it would ever be your turn to inherit. Jenny, Leo, and the other two also called me delusional. Even my own parents looked at me in shock, thinking I was talking nonsense. I laughed, pointed at them, and said, "You tell me, the weather is neither too hot nor too cold right now, so why are all of you covering yourselves up so tightly? Is it because the scars on your bodies have festered, and you're afraid others will see?" As soon as I finished speaking, their expressions changed drastically. I originally had no idea about the condition of their skin. After all, they hurt themselves to get money and were afraid others would find out, so they always covered themselves up tightly whenever they went out. They naively believed that after some time, the marks from pinching, the scars from cutting with a knife, and the wounds from hurting themselves in other ways would heal, but they were wrong. Those scars would never heal. Instead, they would slowly fester, and no medicine could cure them. I discovered their skin was beginning to fester unintentionally during a visit to the hospital that day. I went to the traditional Chinese medicine hospital to get some herbal medicine for body conditioning, and I happened to see them in the dermatology department. Because the decoration of the traditional Chinese medicine hospital is very classical, the glass in each department is a single large pane, allowing a clear view from the outside. For matters that shouldn't be seen by others, they go to the inner room, which is blocked by a screen. That day, before they went into the inner room, while they were exposing their arms and legs for the doctor's preliminary examination, I happened to pass by. After I stopped and stood still, I saw that even the doctor was greatly startled, especially when she saw that all 6 members of her aunt's family were in the same condition. She almost fainted, and I also saw the scars on their bodies, pitted and uneven, with some even oozing pus, which was truly horrifying and disgusting in the end. I don't know whether they got the medicine or not, but I know for sure that they couldn't be cured. After all, there is only one way to stop their skin from continuing to fester and to save their lives. Those ordinary medicines are completely useless. Their faces looked extremely grim, and my aunt asked me suspiciously, "How did you know?" I sneered. "I knew this would happen the moment you picked up that painted pottery basin. Seeing you all wearing more and more layers of clothing, I knew you were not far from death. Especially, ever since that time you went to the traditional Chinese medicine hospital. It was already a death sentence." Haha. My parents immediately gasped. My aunt and the others forced haughty expressions, finally cracked, crumbling and pale, terrified and desperate. But still, I held back a strange, unyielding spirit, not daring to ask me for a solution. I wasn't in a hurry either, just watching them without saying a word. In truth, I couldn't understand why they harbored such hatred toward my family, clinging to us so tightly. Why not be like that neighbor from my past life, who, after getting the money, bought a villa, drove luxury cars, and became a wealthy local? Although the end result is death, at least we were once rich and extravagant. But why are my aunt and her family so fixated on targeting us? In the end, my aunt didn't even ask for a solution. She just dropped the line, "You all need to move out as soon as possible," and then turned and left. My uncle followed right behind her and left as well. Jenny also wanted to leave, but Kevin held her back. Jenny turned around, not understanding his intention. Kevin, however, turned to me and asked, "Lola, tell us, how can we save ourselves?" Even the usually arrogant Linda was now looking at me with anticipation. It seems they are greedy for wealth, but they don't want to risk their lives. But one of them betrayed me, and the other bullied me, so I threw up my hands and coldly replied, "I don't know." Kevin was furious. "Lola, you..." Linda also flew into a rage. "You little bitch, I should have beaten you to death back in school. Even at death's door, they're still cursing me. They really deserve to die." Jenny and Leo, the siblings, thought they would hear a solution, but they got nothing. Instantly, their faces turned extremely unpleasant, as if they had eaten something disgusting. I ignored them and instead asked my parents to call a moving truck to prepare for relocating the shop. After our family moved the shop, a deep grudge was completely formed between our two families. Because I didn't tell them how to save themselves, they became even more furious and continuously obstructed us, preventing us from opening the shop. In the end, we sold all our inventory at a discount to our competitors and decided not to open the shop. I have decided that even if they kneel before me, I will not tell them how to save themselves. They go out less and less. I rarely run into them in the neighborhood, and even if I do, I can only see their eyes, because they are already covered up like Arabs, with only their eyes showing. Going out is only to go to various hospitals for checkups and treatment, which clearly hasn't been effective. Kevin couldn't reach me, so his parents called to beg me, pleading for me to tell them how to save their son. I responded with cold sarcasm, "Isn't Jenny rich? Let her save him. Didn't the Zhang family give you a lot of money? Go save him yourselves." Kevin's mother was so angry she started cursing. "That little bitch is in worse shape than my son. How could she save him? Lola, please. I'm begging you, save Kevin. If you bring him back, I'll let him marry you." Okay, I couldn't help but laugh in anger. I wouldn't save such a scumbag, and you still dare to dream of me marrying into your family. I suggest you clear the shit out of your heads. Before she could speak, I hung up the phone and blocked her in one swift move. Linda's parents don't know me, so naturally, they wouldn't come to me for help, but I heard that at first, they tried to seek medical help, but later they simply stopped caring. After all, they still have a son, and they got money when Linda was married off, so it didn't matter to them anymore. After a while, my aunt and her family had stopped going out altogether. The residents in the neighborhood would point fingers at their house. They said the family was acting very mysteriously, and not only did they seem a bit frightening, but every time they passed by, you could smell a rotting odor, and it was getting stronger each time. Perhaps my aunt and the others also realized or heard something, and they no longer dared to go out, or perhaps their bodies had already rotted to the point where they couldn't move. That day, my mom received a phone call from my aunt. I told her to put it on speakerphone. On the other end of the phone, my aunt's voice was faint and weak. "Sis, can you come see me? Please, I'm dying. Can you come see me?" My mother looked at me with a sad expression, asking for my opinion. I shook my head, signaling her to decline. Who knows what she might do to my mom? What if she tries to drag my mom down with her to die? After my mom refused, my aunt's voice came through the phone, hoarse and desperate. "Why are you so heartless? I'm about to die, and you won't even come. Do you know how much I've resented you my whole life? We grew up the same, started from the same place, yet you married a better husband, had a daughter better than my children, and your family is richer than ours. Every time I went to your house for a meal, it made me so uncomfortable. Do you know that, when I found out you were about to move out of that old, run-down neighborhood, I was almost driven mad with jealousy. I thought heaven took pity on me, giving me immense wealth, letting me stumble upon a treasure bowl, allowing me to far surpass all of you, but I never expected the outcome to be dying from festering, pus-filled wounds. Why is life so unfair to me? Come quickly and join me. Let's die together, die together." My aunt's terrifying scream scared my mom so much that she dropped her phone wide-eyed, staring ahead in disbelief. Both my dad and I were shocked. It turns out her jealousy and resentment towards our family started so early, but they are biological sisters. Shouldn't they be happier the better the other is doing? Why would one be so envious as to want to destroy the other? Fortunately, my mom didn't go. Otherwise she would have definitely dragged my mom to her death. The other end of the phone finally went silent. My mom wanted to call the police, but I stopped her. My mom looked at me puzzled and said, "Lola, I want to call the police. They might need help." I shook my head and said, "Mom, if it were someone else, I wouldn't stop you, but let's just forget about their family. In this lifetime, I haven't sought revenge on them, yet I've still let them bully me, and that alone has made me furious enough. No, standing by and doing nothing is our punishment for them killing us in our past life." My parents stared at me in shock, not understanding what I meant. I told them all about my rebirth and the tragic death in my previous life, such a fantastical event. They never expected it to happen to us. It wasn't until I kept giving examples that they finally believed me. My mom was so angry she threw her phone, and my dad was furious, slapping his thigh repeatedly. Thinking of the tragic death in the previous life and the various events in this one, we completely ignored it. A few days later, many police officers and forensic experts suddenly appeared in the neighborhood. It was said that someone had called the police. Someone had died in the neighborhood. The police were called because of an unbearably foul smell. Not surprisingly, it was the aunt and the others who died. I heard that when the police and forensic experts broke in, they were stunned by the scene and the smell. Their bodies were covered in festering sores and pus, lying dead on the ground in disarray. The smell was so strong it nearly choked them unconscious. When they were finally carried out, the onlookers within a 10-mile radius were all choked and scattered like birds and beasts. If this matter hadn't been suppressed, it would have made the news long ago. Once they died, the property they left behind instantly became an inheritance. Kevin's parents and Linda's parents all rushed out to fight over it. In the end, the properties Kevin and Linda had when they married were returned to their respective parents, and the assets under my aunt's name were all transferred to my mother, but we liquidated all those assets and donated the proceeds. Such ill-gotten gains are better left untouched, otherwise misfortune is sure to follow. After the dust settled, my parents asked me mysteriously, "Lola, do you really know how to save them?" I shook my head and said, "I can't guarantee it, But if they had slammed on the brakes in time and willingly smashed that basin and threw it into the sea, perhaps they could have really broken the curse, but given their greed at the time, how could they have done it? In the face of such a huge amount of money, very few people can resist the temptation. My parents looked at each other meaningfully and then fell silent. That basin was the last thing I took. Just as I was about to smash it with a hammer, I suddenly paused. Maybe if I leave it alone and don't touch it, nothing will happen. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.